Hello everyone, it's Jamarl Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So here we go. The shitstorm is starting. The politics of race. This is Politico, and I really dislike this card that's being played, but that's going to be plucked. This is Politico. House Democrats are calling on their GOP colleagues to hold congressional hearings on the rise of white supremacy and domestic terrorism following Saturday's deadly outburst in Charlottesville, Virginia. Democrats on the House Homeland Security Committee asked the panel chairman Michael McCall to examine racist fringe groups, including those that organized Saturday's violent protest against the removal of a statue in Confederate General Robert E. Lee on a university campus. What do you hope to accomplish doing this? Honestly. So, is the goal of this to stamp out racism? You have about, 10-15% of the country that's probably hardcore. Now, and let's put this in perspective for the moment. A call came out, I guess across the country, to come to Charlottesville for some kind of march. You got like 500 racists, 500 hardcore racists who decided to go to Charlottesville in March and hold flags and whatnot. It's 325 million people in this country. You got 500 to do a march. Why are we talking about Charlottesville? That's my point. Charlottesville was a bunch of people who, like-minded people who decided to express their constitutional right to assemble and to bitch and moan and protest. Good job. It's their right to do it. They did it. They went to Charlottesville. They did their thing. You had other groups who came to essentially contest, expressing their freedom of speech rights. Charlottesville, if we're being honest, if they were allowed to just do their march, nobody would have known Charlottesville existed. It was the conflict that essentially made Charlottesville a thing. There is no rise in quote-unquote white supremacy. Do you believe those people came out the woodwork? Those people were already there. You may have a certain thing of people may stirring them up because something may take place. But you're acting as if those people don't already exist, that that's some kind of rising out of the ether. It's fucking ridiculous. I don't want to talk about Charlottesville. And yet, these guys are now getting to the point where they're having a committee to talk about the rise of white supremacy. Does he know the country that he's in? Are you shitting me? What do you expect to accomplish? What is your goal? What is your objective? You having this particular congressional hearing, what do you think you're going to accomplish? Hey, we found out that there are some people who harbor some pretty racist sentiment. Yes, they do. None of this has to do with anything about white supremacy. All of this has everything to do about tarring the Republican Party and tarring them with Donald Trump. From a political standpoint, this makes perfect sense. You're the Democratic Party. You know that there's some hardcore racists in the other party. They may not represent the entirety of the party, but certainly that element of the party is there. Be honest. It's there. It lives there. It's in a bunker somewhere. It's there. When those people come out to vote, those people vote for the Republican Party. Now, he knows, though the Democratic Party full well knows that Donald Trump was somewhat of a lightning rod in that sense. You know, this kind of idea of, yeah, this guy thinks our way. No, he can't say it. He can't say it. He's president, but he thinks our way. The irony of this is that it was the same thing for Obama with blacks. This is amazing to me. This is, I always kind of make this parallel between Trump and Obama on this point. They're more similar than I think people realize. They're just cut in different ways for the different parties. African Americans had this feeling of Obama can't do anything yet because this is his first term. But in his second term, oh, he's going to rip the chains off. He's going to be Django unchained in that office. Yeah, dude, that wasn't the case. That wasn't the case. Now, in their case, they look at Trump and they think something similar. Oh, he believes that's our guy. That's our guy. He thinks our way. He can't say anything, but he thinks our way. Look, I don't know if that's what goes on in their head. I'm imagining this in this case. This is my model of the world, and this is my model in the sense of what I think they think. And it wasn't just blacks who were thinking that. It was progressives who thought that too. In his second term, you're just going to rip the chains off. You're just going to be unchained. Not so much. Not so much. I don't care about a bunch of races getting together and having their conversations. I don't care. I don't care if 500 races get together in Charlottesville. They're irrelevant to me. It's completely irrelevant to me. Am I to be so naive to believe that there aren't races in this world? There aren't races in this country. There aren't races in this state, in the city. Am I to believe that? I'm not that naive, dude. So yes, I'm not shocked that you can get a bunch of people to come together and march over a sign or anything else. What I do know is holding these investigations are going to harden an us versus them mentality. Meaning, yes, you may get Donald Trump to look bad in a sense. You may get Republicans to some degree to look bad because they don't necessarily want to repudiate elements of their base. But you are going to create a hornet's nest in regards to identity. Right now, the schism that's in society is exacerbated by two things. The focus on identity politics, meaning you have one party that represents minorities and blacks and inclusion and everything else. And then you have another party who represents, for the most part, whites. Whether they're trying to do it or not, they represent whites. Just, if you're looking at voting demographics, don't take my word for it. Just look at the way people vote. There's a schism. That schism exists. For the Republican Party, you have people who are voting against their self-interest, which creates this interesting question of why are they voting against their self-interest to this degree. Some of this stuff becomes tribal. You can make the same argument about Democrats, but come on, let's be honest. Republican Party are more craven in this way. You add to that economic stress, meaning this kind of neoliberal policies where the country is gutted from the inside out. All of this money being spent on military, none of the money being spent in sense of resources within the country itself. So you have crumbling infrastructure, crumbling roads, you have jobs leaving based upon the policies and these trade deals. You're gutting the country. The model itself is eating itself. Not to mention you have automation and other stuff, but I'm making the point that you're adding a certain level of economic stress to a country that's more focused on identity, particularly in the way the politics are arranged. Think about it. Think about how Hillary Clinton ran. You didn't think it was weird that she would say, well, they kept saying, well, hey, Hillary Clinton is going to get the black vote. We make up 13% of the country. Like, it was what they were going with in their head in regards to democratic politics. But they were so emphasized it, making this idea that Bernie Sanders was a white candidate, that they alienated their own candidate. They alienated their own candidate. It exacerbated this idea of us versus them. That's the point I'm trying to make to you. Identity politics makes that schism worse. You're never going to get rid of a certain amount of races in your country just based on how people are. There's always going to be a certain latitude. That latitude may change in regards to people getting better, meaning that the level of hate may be less. But you're still going to get people on that far end of the spectrum who feel a particular way, you're not changing them. Nothing you say to them are going to change them. They are what they are. Leave them to their own devices. The question becomes, what about the other people who are more pushed in that direction based upon the economic stress? You can't get rid of one factor, meaning people are going to be how they are. The factor that you can get rid of is the economic stress part. Your issue is somewhat degree of economics. You're not going to address this problem at the level of the problem, meaning you're not going to say, we're going to stamp out racism. I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you do that. I do know you can make policies that work for everybody in the country. And it work for the people in the country a way where the people have the things that they need. This thing is not stress. It's not this thing where you're putting pressure on people and those people are behaving in aberrant ways. Your problem is to focus on identity politics, dude. These people are going to have their marches. Yeah, in fact, there's going to be a march in Richmond, apparently, coming up in my city, the heart of the Confederacy. I told you, we have a bunch of statues and monument. It's Monument Avenue. And it's one statue after the next. I have to be honest, I don't have any feelings about those statues. I can't affect anything in regards to how people feel in that sense. So I don't try. People are changed through experience, not necessarily through me telling them stuff. I want to be left to my own devices. They can be left to their own devices. In the sense of the statues, if the city gets together and say we want to remove that statue, then remove the statue. But removing the statue doesn't necessarily mean that that guy didn't exist. And that guy at some point was part of the Confederacy. And Richmond was part of the Confederacy. That is the history of the state. Removing the statue doesn't change it, nor does it change how people feel in this particular city or state. That being said, I can understand people feeling some kind of way about it. I think the people who are marching to protect those statues is doing it for this idea of some level of identity. They're identifying with it. It's just their identification with it is in a really nasty time in American history, at least in regards to African Americans, us, both sides of my family, Native Americans and African Americans. So you can understand it becomes this racially charged thing just because it's almost like a refighting of the Civil War. My feeling is the same. If I'm being fair, free speech is free speech. Those people can march. It's their right to march. If they don't want those statues moved, then they can march. They can protest. They're doing what they're supposed to do. It shouldn't be violent. It shouldn't be towards or against anybody per se. But certainly they have the capacity to march. It freaks people out when it's overtly racist. So you can understand where that comes from. It's one thing to say we want to march to protect the statue in regards to this kind of Southern pride thing. It's another thing to be holding the Confederate flag and burning crosses and shit. But yeah, if they want to march, let them march. There's supposed to be a counter march in Richmond. Is this thing of marching somewhere else. Again, this idea of, well, letting those guys express themselves in the way they want to express themselves, but we doing something else somewhere else as a counter to it, not in the same spot, letting them do their thing, but somebody else kind of in solidarity against that particular thing. Yeah, man, however people want to feel about it. I guess people feel like they need to do something, like they need to intervene. If these guys are marching, we need to also march. Okay. I don't like the violence part. I don't like this thing of we need to contest them. We need to infringe upon their free speech, which creates violence and conflict. Even in that article didn't kind of make this point that it wasn't that they went there and they were just overtly violent. People were contesting them. They were interacting with the crowd who was marching against them. That article doesn't necessarily give that context. And look, this is not me backing up the Nazi thing. I despise what they stand for in this sense. This is more of a free speech thing. And this is also somewhat, it's kind of me just kind of resigning to the thing of, yeah, I have no power over changing them. So, here's what it is. I would prefer Democrats not do this, but Democrats are going to do this. Because for them, look, from a political standpoint, you can tar your opponent as racist. Democrats love calling the other side racist. And so if you can do that, and you can create this image of, yes, we can tie these guys to those guys, then yeah, it looks good for you. It's nice politics. It just fucks over the country. I don't like it. So I'll leave it at that. Alright guys, if you enjoy the content, feel free to share, subscribe, and of course, you can always support the work through Patreon. Thank you.